This morning I rose from my slumber and I was having a and whilst I was on the toilet, I was looking at Twitter like I do, and I found this tweet. A friend of mine received this sealed and graded original copy of Pokemon Yellow. US Customs broke the acrylic case, ripped and discarded the seal, sliced the front of the box off. Maybe they weren't fans of the Water games. And this image brought me some pain, primarily because there is a box of Pokemon Yellow with the front just cut off. This is absolute video game gore. I didn't know what Water Games was, and the replies to the tweet were a mixed bunch. A lot of people just like alarmed that Customs can do this. That is one part of the story that I think is funny, especially when it's apparently a $3,000 copy, someone said in the comments. Also, the guy posting it is Stephen Kick, who is actually has worked on Turok before that I have boxed copies of in my cupboard, and has also worked on the System Shock remake that I didn't know existed, that I've just wishlisted and just downloaded the demo of, so that's exciting. The other weird thing is that this tweet is from January 19th, so I guess it's gained traction over the last couple of days, and finally Twitter's putting it into my feed. Twitter's a mess. But the other response that I found really interesting is that a lot of people are saying it's a fucking scam, that you shouldn't be getting your games graded, that it's good that it was destroyed by Customs. Now honestly, it's never good that anyone destroys a boxed retro game like this. But the scam element I've heard of before, and that's what I wanted to talk about in today's video. Now, for some context, this channel is normally about collectibles, and for that reason I've talked about fart jars, NFTs, and I've also talked about Mariah Carey's collectible card she released 2 Christmases ago. And yes, I'm wearing a dressing gown because it's fucking freezing in the UK. So yeah, I collect passively. I'm not like a heavy collector of retro stuff, primarily Nintendo. Here's a transfer pack. I'm just gonna show you some bits that I grabbed out of my cupboard real quick. A boxed copy of Pokemon Sapphire, a little bit banged up. We've got a quite good condition except for this front tear. This is Pokemon Red, the first ever Pokemon game I got. This is not my original copy, but this is one of my probably most nostalgic titles. So having a box copy of this in my hand right now just feels, I feel it emanates like warmth and joy. It's really strange. Another classic, Super Mario Land, although some fucker has written the trade-in number over the barcode perhaps 20 years ago, and it's persevered to this day. And 2 others I just grabbed out. Yoshi Story, one of my favourite platformers on the N64. Funnily enough, the box is in shit state, but I got it, I bought it. I think, I can't remember where I got it actually, maybe eBay. But it came in a protective case, which I think is a good idea for box copies. And then I recently picked up a boxed copy of Yoshi Island in much better condition than the game that's like 5 years younger. Yoshi Island, Super Mario World 2. I prefer Yoshi Story actually, I think the soundtrack's better. With that out of the way, I'm just giving you some context for the fact that I love retro video games. I'm a huge Nintendo fan, so to see box games damaged is alarming. It's upsetting, it causes me physical pain. So this image, painful, right? And the idea that this is worth a lot of money and then got cut up by Customs is also an interesting anecdote, but the scam stuff is the interesting part. I had no idea until today, after I started looking into it to perhaps make a video about this, that Water Games, who are one of the big game graders, have been basically exposed as a scam. I'm not going to go into too much detail. There are videos on it. I'll put a video in the link in the description below to the big expose video that everyone points to. The one that Asmongold and I say Asmongold, I don't know if he has, but Most Critical has reacted to. Everyone's reacted to this video. It's about a year old, pointing out the scammy nature of this shit. To fill you in with a little bit of context here, basically grading games allows you to ask for a much higher price for them online, and it's basically creating a illusory collector's bubble. Boxed games are worth money. For those of you who are totally out of the know and you come here from Magic, like this game here came out in 1990. This game is 33 years old. To have a boxed cardboard copy of the game in relatively good nick is just unusual now, because although Super Mario Land was one of the biggest selling, or one of the earliest big sellers on the Game Boy, so therefore there are probably countless millions of copies of this in circulation at the time and in existence, getting it boxed, as you can hear the insert isn't fully in there, getting it boxed now when the box was out of cardboard 33 years ago is difficult. So for that reason, boxed copies, especially of popular, sought after, rare, and then of course cardboard box retro stuff, can start to get you a good price on the secondary market, because they are rare items that have a desire and a need. But sealing them up and slabbing them much like you would do with trading cards. Here's some Magic cards on screen there that are graded. This hyperinflates the price. It is basically emulating the rare coin market of the 80s, which was also a bit of a scam, and trading cards too, which is not necessarily a scam. When it comes to grading trading cards, there's another argument, just protecting them, you know, getting them graded so you check the centering and the edges of the card and all this sort of stuff, and to elevate that card in particular to be one of the pristine versions that has ever existed, and then seal it away so it can never change from that condition. The idea of these slabbing of these video games and cards is to keep them in the condition forever. And that part I understand, and that part I came into seeing this tweet this morning thinking, I was like, okay, it's been graded, it's a fucking 30+ year old game, surely, is it 30? This came out in 1990, and I'm 33. Yeah, I came out a little bit before this did. My mother's womb, that is. I just thought they were protecting it by sealing it up. But I also didn't realize that this is like inflating the price by like a magnitude of 10 at some points. There are copies of graded games that have sold for tens, hundreds of thousands. I think I saw, see if I can find it for the edit, someone claiming that Super Mario 64 sold for like 1.5 million or some absurd number. It's all complete bollocks. It's just the hyperinflation of a market, the hyperinflation of a bubble to create a market, to shift shit that will eventually burst, and then you're left holding the bag when you've bought your hyperinflated, costly thing that isn't actually worth what they're claiming. Basically, very similar to how NFTs work, except at least you got the physical object originally. There is this whole discussion around how retro video games are meant to be played, and that was the point that I was originally going to do this video on before I realised that actually all the grading stuff was hyperinflating prices to the point that it's very obviously a scam. But I also appreciate that having to or wanting to play the game itself is an important part of having retro video games. It's also part of the trading card side of it too. There's an argument against grading, especially grading cards that can't be reprinted anymore. So Magic the Gathering has a list of cards that I promise they will never reprint. It's called the reserve list. They technically broke it last year, but that's something I'm not going to go to in this video if you've joined here not to talk about Magic. But the point is, those cards can never be reprinted. So as you get them sealed into a slab, into a graded case, that means that the amount of those in circulation is going down, which does drive the cost of buying those cards to play with them. My dogs are barking at the postman, you might be able to hear that in the background. But when it comes to retro video games, it's a difficult one because I know there are people out there that buy the retro games to play them on the consoles or to play them even on CRT TVs to get the full retro experience. My friend John, chief admin on my Discord, and a very good mate of mine, does this. He is a retro game collector who wants to play retro games on the original consoles. Meanwhile, I'm very much of the case that I don't want to damage these anymore. These things are in finite supply. In another 50 years, when I'm on my deathbed or whatever, God, that's a tragic thing to think about. But this is going to be as rare as rocking horse shit, because they're not going to be any more of them unless they reproduce them, in which case it's not really the authentic, like, dank smelling original. I don't mind having these, you know, on a shelf in this original condition that I can get out and look at, and I can evoke that feeling of having it in the back seat of my parents' car and taking out the manual and reading it and getting those nostalgic feels. I don't necessarily need to click the cartridge into it. Okay, no, I'm getting it. Clicking the cartridge into the Game Boy is part of the nostalgia. But I think video game emulation, re-releases and such, I think that really helps to scratch that itch for me at least. But I do appreciate that some aren't like that. But I do think that preserving some copies of these things in sealed slabs even is not a bad thing. I just don't think you should be doing it via grading companies that are ripping you off. Oh, I looked into it, by the way. These water things, it's a minimum cost of $50, probably averaging around 100. Can be as high as like 250, 300 bucks if you do like the full cleaning 5 business day return shit. It's making so much money off you for you then to try and sell it to some poor schmuck on eBay who's gonna get burnt with this bubble burst. And we've seen this again recently with the VHSs as well. Because card games have done this, now retro games have done this, we're now seeing it's the trading card game and sneakerification of things, right? It's those two cultures leaking over into other collectible or retro nostalgia markets. But VHSs are now a thing, but they're not really a thing. It's just a fake lot of bollocks. Is the original sleeve cellophane wrapped copy of Alien on VHS really worth $5,515? Or is that just a super hyperinflated cost that's trying to drive some people to jump into the next gold rush? It's the latter, right? Again, I'm not going to labour this point. Red Letter Media have done a fantastic video on this. Again, that's going to be linked in the description too if you want to watch a video about VHS grading. I just find all of this stuff coming from a video game enthusiast and retro game pseudo collector and a card game background on this channel as well. I find this all fascinating to see new markets emerge with more fucking scammy shit going on. And the one other thing I want to add to all this before I sign off is that when you talk about these companies charging an arm and a leg to put a plastic case around a thing that's not really worth the price you're now going to stick on eBay for, people point out that it's not really illegal. And there's two elements to that that really piss me off when people make these defenses. First of all, just because something's not illegal doesn't make it immoral. I'm not going to give examples right now because the first ones that come to my head open up a whole discussion that I don't want to see in the comments, but there are plenty of things that aren't illegal that are still immoral. Here's one that I can do that. I don't think the comments will be too toxic about. It's not illegal in terms of the law to cheat in a game of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Digimon, whatever your tabletop game of choice is. But it's certainly immoral. We should definitely say, don't fucking do that. So that's the first one. And the second one is, a lot of these things aren't illegal because they aren't, what's the word I'm looking for? They aren't regulated markets, that's it. Insider trading when it comes to Magic the Gathering cards, knowing what's coming up and then buying into things that are about to explode in value because they're now more playable. That's a thing, for example, of a market that is not regulated, but if you were doing that in the stocks market, if you had inside information about what's happening with the company and you use that information to procure stocks to sell, I'm saying this, I'm not really a stock market expert. My point is, in regulated markets, in places like mortgages or stocks and bonds and shit, some of this kind of thing is illegal, creating bubbles, market demand when there isn't actually demand, faking shit, lying, scammy behaviour. But when you do scammy behaviour in the collectible market of VHSs, DVDs and retro video games, well, the government doesn't really give a shit in most countries. However, when these bubbles burst and people lose money, I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't court cases that cause precedent to happen. And when you set a precedent, not president. When you set a precedent, you can make law on that, I believe. Again, hashtag not a lawyer. My point is, it not being illegal doesn't make it right. And also, it's not going to be illegal if the government doesn't give a shit. Anyway, this was a rabbit hole that I went down today after seeing a tweet about a boxed copy, a sealed, graded boxed copy of Pokemon Yellow get cut open by the US Customs Office. What a bunch of bastards. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. I hope you've enjoyed this little look into a weird old world. And I'll see you all soon. If it's a like, comment and subscribe if you want more magic and collectible content. And I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.